the preparation for an interview. It's a problem that we all face today. Getting the job, they say, of course, is not easy. But the toughest part, of course, of that process of getting the job is if you can actually hack the interview. And this is a major problem for many people because they pass all the recruitment processes, including application. But when it comes to that final day for you to be given the job, we all somehow just end up losing it. And that's what we want to talk about this morning. We have one guest who, of course, who is experienced in career matters interviews, will help us, of course, and tell us what you need to know and do in order to emerge top, of course, in that interview process. Grace Odongo is a career coach. She's joining us for this discussion this morning. Good morning, Grace, and welcome to the show. All right, of course. That is Grace. Please try to unmute your mic, Grace, before, of course, we can proceed with this conversation. And as she does that, we want you to, of course, be part of this conversation by, of course, tweeting us at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _. Use the hashtag #NewNormal. Of course, we ask you now question of the day. What question do you struggle with the most in an interview? What question do you struggle with the most in an interview? Tweet us at NTV Kenya and at Victor Kiprop _. Use the hashtag #NewNormal. You could also do the same by, of course, following or commenting on the questions that we've put out on our Facebook and Instagram posts. If you're not on social media, you can call in on the numbers below your screen and be part of this conversation. Let's now go back to, of course, my guest this morning. I mentioned Grace Odongo. She's a career coach. Grace, if you're ready now, good morning and welcome to the show.
Morning.
All right, it's good to see you again. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
All right, let's start here. I mean, the whole process of finding a job can be a bit hectic and long, but why does this part of the interview have to be so... I mean, every time you're just told, okay, you need to come for the interview next week, everyone just gets tensed and we all worry, okay, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to know? What am I supposed to study? Am I supposed to look at their logo? Am I supposed to remember what I studied in school? Why does it have to be such a tensed kind of a situation?
Most of the time it's tensed because, remember, the person who is coming in for that interview really wants the job. So they're tensed because they want to put their A game. In most circumstances, people want to bring their A game. And that is why it is so tense. You don't know what the panel is expecting. You don't know if they'll put in tricky situations. And nowadays, there's always, like, reading of the body language. There's always that other cue that they look out for that you might not have prepared for. So that is why there's all this anxiety around it, and the energy is so strong. Around just before, let's say the day before you do the interview, and then on that morning just before you go in. And usually a few minutes when you get into that room, there's always that, there's a knot in your stomach and you want to breathe in fast and you don't want to show anxious. It's just the energy of really wanting to put your A game.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about that A game now that you've mentioned it, because I mean the entire recruitment process is sometimes not so much tensed. I mean, you see a job advert, you apply for it, they ask you to submit your documents, you do. They ask you maybe to take an aptitude test, you do, you succeed. They ask you for any other, of course, they take you through any other process that they have for you. And then when the day comes, they now tell you, okay, you have to come for the interview next week. And all of a sudden, even the brightest of people, start to lose it. So what do I need to know? What do I need to do?
So let's assume you've sent me the invite. The first thing I need to do is to prepare. Okay. Because if you don't prepare, then you prepare to fail. Mm-hmm. And that's what some candidates do when they probably don't check their emails. They don't know if they're supposed to be there at 8 or at 9. So there are certain things which I will go through. There are certain points or cues that someone can do to prepare for an interview, okay, which is very...
And maybe we can go into that preparation then, because preparation could mean just about anything. It could mean selecting the best suit for the day, looking out for what the company CEO likes to wear. It could be just about anything.
I like the way you're thinking, because to be honest, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But that I'm going to talk about are best practices. So this is what, if you want to be successful, these are the basics. Like, this is the foundation of making sure that you're prepared for an interview.
Okay.
I have two sections. So the first section, I'll just talk about a normal interview. Then the second session, I will talk about how to prepare for a virtual interview, because there's two dynamics to it.
And I like the bit about virtual interview because even from your background, it's very nice. It's in the farm, and that nowadays could literally be my background as I apply for, take this interview, because back in the day, interviews used to be physical, but nowadays it's online, and you have to take it maybe in your house with your family or in a very beautiful farm like you do. So let's do it.
Yep. So the first thing, let's talk about the physical things you'd want to do when you're preparing for a virtual interview.
Okay.
And some of it will tie in when you're probably just walking into an interview room. The thing is, how does your environment, like you said, where will you sit when you're doing the interview? Will you do it in your living room? Will you do it in your bedroom? What are the kind of wall hangings you have? You know, some things people don't think about it. But when you sit in front of the camera, what shows on your background? Because that's a reflection of what portrays part of your characteristics.
Really?
So your location is very critical. Also reflects on the issue of lighting. Because if you're not in a proper lighting setting, then even the other person on the other side will not be able to see you. And nowadays, there's that aspect of turn on your camera, you know, see how you're responding back. They want to see your body language. So they want to see the room setting. Then the third one, I would talk about equipment in terms of microphone. So when you're doing an interview, you don't want to be... for example, like today, I didn't check that I was muted.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have tested the equipment.
Yeah.
You have tested the phone so that you are audible. That's
Okay.
another thing. If you're not audible during the interview, then the other person is not able to see you. There's some people you keep on saying, repeat, come again, you know, until you move closer to, like, you want to listen to them on the television. It's crazy. But those are some of the things you want to look out for. The other thing which is very critical, which also ties into just a normal interview, is how you're dressed. How do you appear for the interview? You don't want to put on, you know, your ragged t-shirt, you know, like it's trendy, yes.
Yeah.
But formal interview, you probably want to put on a suit and a tie if you're a man. If you're a lady, you want to put on a skirt suit with a nice blouse or something presentable. I know there's all this funny...
Allow me to hold you there with the issue of presentable, because sometimes presentable is very questionable. We tend to translate presentable to equate, you know, having a suit. So I am a recent graduate. I don't have a very decent suit. But you know what? Everyone in this room with me who is being interviewed has a very nice suit. Also, I mean, if I'm being interviewed for, let's say, for any other casual job as a driver or even as a cleaner, do I need to come with a suit?
I think it's the way you present yourself. And remember, when you're doing the job interview, it's a question and answer format. So you're not yet for practical. So for example, if you are being taken for a driver for a tractor, you're not still practical. Just in a room, you're still just, you know, asked if for them to see if you're a good fit, if you have the characteristics they want in their company. So you want to bring your A game, and that's why they say you have to present yourself in a formal way. Again, let me say, you don't have to put on a suit, but you can put on a nice shirt, isn't it? You can put, you know, like you said, you're just a graduate, you don't probably have money for a suit, but many a times people have borrowed suits. I'm not saying it's something you want to do if you're not comfortable with it, but you can at least, on the minimum, have a proper shirt, a proper trouser. If you're a lady, you can put on a nice blouse with a skirt or a trouser if you're comfortable with that. And then that also ties in with your posture. Like, it also gives you an oomph in terms of your confidence, even when you're walking into a room.
Okay, let me hold you on that issue of dressing for a moment, because I mean, we equated proper dressing or decent dressing to formal wear. I mean, I could come in with a very good jeans and a nice t-shirt and some nice boots, and I'm very neat, by the way. My hair is well brushed. I mean, if you're a girl, your skin is well oiled, and you're pretty much decent. The only problem is you're wearing a jeans.
Let me also bring another aspect in response to that.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen many NGOs nowadays are toning down the issue of coming in for interviews, and they tell you, to just dress casual, smart. So most of the time you'll find cues from you researching on the company. So if you research on the company, you'll find out, oh, this is how they actually dress up when they go for that interview. But if in the invitation they tell you, just dress casually, smart casual is fine, then you can be able to tone down.
Okay.
But many have seen people, even when they're told to tone down, they're not quite sure, because it has been a norm.
Okay.
It has been to dress officially.
One last thing on the issue of dressing, Grace. Nowadays we have this whole thing of virtual interviews. It's probably the reason I'm interviewing you virtually at the moment. Do I have to bother with the tie and the suit and everything when this thing is just on Zoom?
In my perspective, yes, you do. Mainly because it's part of you showing how serious you are for the role. You can imagine if you were interviewing me today when I was in my night dress, for example.
Okay.
Nightgown. How serious would be the viewers who are listening, or how serious would be the other? As a presenter, you've come with your A game with a suit, and me, I'm not looking like I'm part of the whole process.
Okay.
So it's getting that people have taken their time out to come and listen to you, to convince them that yes, you're qualified for this job, and yes, I am serious about this, and give me a shot. So
Okay.
it's just, I said it also boosts your confidence. That is one, and two, it also gives and portrays that professionalism that could come from you. So yes, it's important.
Okay. Let's talk about that preparation bit, especially for the issue of the questions now, because I mean, how am I supposed to know? As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, the questions could be just about anything. It could be, I mean, a question based on what the job, maybe if I'm a banker, anything about the banking industry. It could be anything about maybe what's happening in the country. It could be politics, and it could as well be what the favorite drink of their CEO, or what kind of a tie he likes to wear.
Yeah, I like that. So usually, I would say there are some common questions which cut across every interview. Number one, they want to know more about yourself. Like, who are you? Because they've seen you on paper. They have read your credentials. Probably if you've been doing interview exercises, you have done that. Yes, they're happy. But now here is Grace. Who is Grace? They want to hear your voice. They want to hear you explaining your attributes, your positive attributes. Trying to sell yourself in terms of your skills, competences, on how you can actually do the role. So there are basic things that they will probably ask, and it's more about tell us about yourself. One thing I would want to put there is sometimes when people are told to tell the panel about themselves, they want to go into family matters. Oh, I stay here, from here, and it should be cued towards the role. Yeah. So highlight the skills and competencies that you have, so that you're responding and telling them that yes, I am who you're looking for this role.
And I like that you've highlighted that issue, that question, because it's the question I think I hate the most, and probably everyone hates the most. I mean, what am I supposed to say? You asked me to tell you about myself. Am I supposed to talk about my family, what I like? Is it my hobby? Is it what I have studied? Is it my experience? Or is it the football match that I watched last night?
So mainly you summarize your key attributes. Probably you can give them a highlight of your background in terms of education, so you can highlight that. And of course, we are not dwelling on, I went to this primary school and these are the hardships I went, and this was my favorite subject. you want to highlight and say, oh, this is my secondary school. My name is Grace. I went to this school. After high school, I went to university. I was passionate about, for example, cooking, and therefore I went to do catering. And from there on, then my experience has been, I have worked in many hotelier industry, and these are the key attributes that I have. You know, I can come to work on time. I make sure that the menu has, the food comes out as per the menu, the expectations of, and so you're bringing out the key attributes that you have in a nutshell. So you're not going deep, because remember, the interview is just beginning. So you don't want to deep dive before it is time. So you're just giving them the highlight of, this is the top layer of who Grace is.
All right. And of course, remember we asked you to get us, to send us some of those very tricky and questions that you are going to struggle with. And our question of the day, we asked you, what question do you struggle with most? What question do you struggle with most? And maybe we can start with this one, Grace. All I hear says, number one, how much I want to be paid. And then number two, I was once asked about my shortcomings, in brackets, weaknesses, after eloquently airing out my strengths. So let's start with the one about how much I want to be paid, Grace.
This is usually a tricky question. And that also ties in terms of research. Have you researched what the best practices is, what other companies are paying for the role? So remember, there is the person who is applying for a role, but they've been doing this role in another organization or in the current organization. Then there is a graduate who is applying for a role, but they have never actually worked. So those are the two scenarios. So when you are told, how much do you want to be paid? What the angle I would look at it is usually give a range.
Okay.
When you have done your research, you'll say, I'm okay with a range of between maybe 50 to 70. Sometimes they want you to narrow it down to a figure. Then you can say, okay, the average I would want to, have is maybe 65.
Yeah.
But it's down to you doing the research. Don't go when you don't have any figure and then you just say, I'll take what you give me.
Okay. And maybe because you have mentioned the issue of research, you could do all the research you want. Let's say I'm looking for a job at Bank A, and I find out that for this job, they compensate, let's say, 1 million shillings, between 1 million and 2 million shillings. But I mean, we are living in a country where millions of people are jobless, and of course the economy is doing us bad things, and I'm afraid that if I say what exactly I want to be paid, someone else will come from the hundreds we are being interviewed from and underquote, and of course they'll take the other guy. I don't want to lose the job.
I know, but remember, usually all organizations have salary scales. So you will not be put in a salary scale where your role does not fit. So the salary scale usually dictates what you're going to be given. But the panel also wants to know if, for example, you're too expensive, so that they're not bringing you in. And that is the thing that they want to check out, that they're not bringing you in today, and then tomorrow, if you get a higher paying job somewhere, you're going to leave. So they're kind of looking for that commitment that you're fitting in within their scale. Or if you're not, how can they work towards making sure that you'll be rightly compensated according to what you're hoping for once you the probation period?
All right. Let's talk about the second part of that question from Olan. It was about weaknesses and strengths, because when it comes to strengths, I can eloquently describe why I'm the best banker in the world and everything else. But then they ask me about my weaknesses, and I really want to talk about my weaknesses, but I'm afraid they'll look at my weaknesses and they're like, then you're not the best person for this job.
So what I usually advise people on the aspect of weaknesses is turn it around to be positives. For example, I'll say, I have a weakness of attention to detail. Now, attention to detail necessarily is not a bad thing, but you can say why I would look at it as a weakness is because I take too long to probably edit or review a document. But then you add another positive to it and say, now when I send my reports will be at par because I will have taken time to read it and actually analyze and make sure that everything is in place.
Okay.
So you don't go into talking about your weaknesses or like, for example, I'm not a morning person. So if you're not a morning person and you're supposed to report to work at 8, how do you maneuver that? So it's tying into the positive of it. Like you can ask.
And that's important because I was about to ask you, I mean, not every of my, each one of my weaknesses actually has a positive side. Maybe I just don't like waking up in the morning. So how do I say in the interview, hey, mimi kuamka nayo?
That is why you have to be wise when you're responding to questions. Remember the job. You're not socializing with the panel. You are here to convince them that you want the job. So highlight those attributes that even if they're looked at as a weakness, they're still going to be a plus for the role that you're going for. Let me give you an example. If you're not a morning person, but they have a shift system, you can always say, because I know I'm not a morning person, if you give me this role, I'll be willing to work nights. So that is a plus.
Okay.
So look at the role you're applying for and look at, that's why you're preparing for this. You're not just going to blatter anything out. You're going to prepare and say and look at the weaknesses, which if you are asked, if you say it, it's going to add points to you getting the job.
All right. Let's get some more questions, which, of course, you've been sending us now. If, of course, they're ready. Yes, we have Joseph who says, do you have any question to the panel? Grace, I mean, I came here to be asked the questions. Why am I mean, you're asking me to ask you a question?
Yes. This usually is the last question before you probably are asked about the salary, or they ask about the salary and then they ask, do you have a question for the panel? It's because they want to know if you're curious about the organization that you're going to work for. It's not about you just getting the role. Have you researched on it? What are some of the things that intrigues you to come and apply? Because usually there's some questions you'd want to, get clarification on. What is the culture of the organization? Do you have to be here at 8? Do you have flexible working policy? So it's about you showing more interest, and also for them to see that you have a characteristic towards asking more. You're curious. You're not just taking everything that you're being given, but you can also poke and find out what more is there. And it's for you to also find out if it's a good fit. Remember, it's a two-way thing. It's not just you getting the job, because there are people who have been offered jobs and they've turned it down.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's take some more questions. Yes. Otis says, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Very good question.
I love it. So when you're going to any organization, again, it depends on where you are in your profession. It could be that you've been in the industry for 5 years or you're just a beginner. So depending on where you are, the panel wants to see if there is a trajectory towards your profession. So are they in a position to offer you that trajectory? So for example, if you're a graduate, you're just getting in, they'll probably be giving you courses, they'll be mentoring you so that you can grow up the scale. What if you're a top level CEO and you're coming in? What are your aspirations in the next 5 years? So they want to see if some of your attributes or some of your aspirations also ties in towards their culture. For example, if you're looking towards mentoring the young kids or mentoring graduate schools or mentoring people that are like, oh yeah, that is a good attribute that we would want to have. We'd want to have that person in our company because it's going to show that positivity. So you always have to prepare in terms of where do you see yourself in the next 5 years in terms of your profession. Okay. Are they going to training? Are they going to offer you positions? If you are at the top level, then what next for you? So it's just for them to assess.
So this question is solely on issues of career, because if you ask me where I'll be in 5 years, I think maybe I'd be married with 2 kids.
Yes. And that also ties into some of the questions you can ask. For example, if you're single and you will have a family in the next 5 years, you want to know if they have a good medical cover that will cover all your family. So when you're given that opportunity to ask, then you can say, yes, how is your medical scheme? Do you have a pension scheme? If someone is at the end of their career and they're probably about to retire, what kind of pension scheme do you have? And so it all ties in together.
Okay. Before we take the next question, I've just remembered something about the etiquette during the interview, because there's so much I think there's so much instructions on what you need. Oh, you need to walk in while you're smiling. You need to maintain eye contact. Even when you're leaving, I don't know, you should not bang the door behind you. You should keep looking at the people until you exit the room. I mean, what's all these things? I just came for a job.
Oh, okay. Yes, etiquette is important. I would want to say that if you do your research when you're preparing for the interview, some of the things would scare you. But usually I tell people, be yourself. Just be yourself. You don't want to be someone that you're not. And some of these things or some of the etiquettes are things that you normally would interact with. For example, do you go banging doors? When you walk into a room, I know there's always this thing. I remember when I was just starting off, when you'd be told if you go into a room, don't sit before you're told to sit. You know, like that is a problem.
Yes.
You don't want to sit. But I feel the interviews are nowadays more relaxed. And even as you walk in, they already tell you, oh, how are you? How was your journey? Do you have a seat? You know, do you want water? Do you want tea? And so it's not the previous interviews where it was, we have the job and you are the job seeker. It is now both, both ways. So it's being comfortable in yourself, just doing what you would do normally, but just in a way that would portray you better.
Okay, let's take some more questions. Yes, we have some ready. Yes, we have. King J says, have you ever attended an interview before? Okay, this question would feel like some bit of an insult for me if you asked me if I've ever. I mean, are you saying I don't sound like someone who has never been to any other interview before?
No, there's two aspects to this question. There's the one that, have you attended an interview before? It could be on the same role, so in the same company. So they want to find out if you have been in their system before. Most of the time it's probably because they're asking the same question, so they just want to know. But if they're just asking you, it could be that you're a fresh graduate and then they're asking, have you attended an interview before? Maybe because they have seen that you're so nervous, so they want to make you feel more comfortable. That is why they would probably ask that question. I don't see why else they would ask, have you attended an interview before? Unless you're applying for the same role or a different role in the same company. So they just want to get that clarification. Or if you're a graduate and they just want to make you comfortable so that they can make sure that you're giving your A game in the interview.
Okay, so let's talk about the issue that I asked you about, because, I mean, that bit when you're opening, when you're leaving the room, there are those, recommendations that they tell you, okay, before you close the door behind you, make sure that you maintain eye contact with the person, of course, with the panel. There's the issue of, if you're being asked questions by one person, even if another person asks you, please respond directly to the person chairing the panel. Sometimes you feel like there are just so many things that you need to follow that might not really gauge my competence as an employee.
That's why I said be yourself. Remember, there are people who are very shy and they talk when looking to the ground. Like you even try so many times to ask them to raise up they look up and then they go down. So usually in the panel, you get people who can read a person, so they can look at their characteristics. But coming to your point of eye contact is important. But mainly, let me give you an example here. I remember when I was traveling to London, and I found out that for them, it is critical for you to look into their eyes when you're responding. And then when I looked at my cultural background, when you're into you don't look at them straight in the eye when you're talking. And so that's crazy, because I had to learn some new characteristics that when you're talking to people, you look at them straight in the eye. So some of this, as you go for or prepare for interviews, you also have to look at the cultural background. What kind of, how have these people been brought up? And those are some of the cues you want to consider if you are on the other side, if you're the panel. Now, if you're the interviewee and you're coming into the room, you also want to do a preparation. Where am I? What is my surrounding? What are the expectations? You've done your research and you've been told, yes, you need to keep an eye contact. Again, when you're responding to questions, you can't look at just one person. Remember, it's a panel of probably 5 or 3 or 2.
Okay.
So it's good responding. You look at the person who gave you the question, but look across the room on each and every person as you're responding, because you're not just responding to one person, you're responding to the panel. And it means you are in contact with all of them, not just one person.
Okay. Let's talk about language for a moment, because sometimes they ask you a question, the interview is being conducted in English, but hii swali nayo unajua answer. Lakini kizungu naye kidogo imekuja na meli. You really know what you are supposed to say, but English kidogo. Can I answer in another language?
You read the room or the environment where you are at. You'll find if they're asking questions, and sometimes they also use or drop in Kiswahili, then you can always, ask, is it okay? Or sometimes even when you're explaining, you'll find yourself just dropping in a Kiswahili word because it's a norm. And it's if you read the cue and you find that it's comfortable to do that, you can do that. If not, if you're not conversant with that language, you can always ask, because sometimes they even have translators and someone can translate. The other thing you want to do is look at the panel. Does the panel understand the language that you're communicating in? For example, if you wanted to communicate in Kiswahili and your panel don't understand Kiswahili, it means you're not going to be in communication. So you also look at the panel, look at the language, and look at the environment. Are they people who understand what language you want to use? And those are some of the things you can ask if there's a provision for that. Because remember, there's some jobs where you are asked, they want English, but they also want French.
Okay.
So they're probably they're in a French-speaking environment. So you also, if you're not able to speak French, you can always say, I can only speak English, but could you have a translator for this French speaker? Something of the sort. So you can always ask those beforehand.
All right. And maybe for anyone who is worried, assume I'm looking for a job in Bank A and I work for Bank B at the moment. And part of the people are recruiting, one of them is maybe a cousin or a distant friend of mine, or just someone I know. And I really want to ask this question. What qualifies as, canvassing, which should be legal in the interview, and what doesn't? Because sometimes you're just allowed to call and ask, by the way, is this thing going to be on Zoom? I mean, just seeking further clarification if, of course, the invite is not clear.
Most of the time when you're being invited for an interview, you'll be given a contact number, and it could be a contact number for your recruiter, or it could be a contact number for the HR team that is seeing through. And you are always told, reach out and ask questions. And yes, you can be able to ask as much questions as you want, because remember, you're preparing for the interview. If you have a relative on the other side, it just depends on the questions you're asking. When you're talking about canvassing, you want the answer sheet. I think that is what it is referred to as canvassing. You want the answer sheet to the question so that when you go in, if they asked A, you say B. You're right on it. But if you're just asking general questions, yes, you can go forward and inquire and ask about the time. Remember, even there's some organizations you don't even know where they are. It's only that now we have so many taxis around that can take you literally to that place with a Google map. But before, you would probably just, board a matatu and then walk. You can probably be walking 100 miles. When you reach, you're sweating.
Yeah.
So it's to ask various questions, like how far is it? Do matatus reach there? Like public transport, what do I need to bring? Should I bring water? Should I carry a pen and a paper? Will I get that? It's good to ask questions.
Okay.
And usually for you to do that.
All right, Grace, let's take the last set of questions, of course, from our viewers this morning. Of course, yes, we have Odongo Barak who says, who referred you here? Before you respond to that, maybe we can get another one. There was a question about, yes, we have this one. Why do you feel best suited for this job? So who referred you here? And why do you feel best suited for this job? And then the last one, if you're asked, why do you want to leave your current employer? What do you answer? So let's start with the last one. Why do you want to leave your current employer?
So usually they want to find out if there's an issue with your current employer. And this is funny because some of the responses you get are usually a bit chilling. You don't. It's not a situation where you now want to go and start bad mouthing your current employer or your previous employer, or you want to bad mouth your manager. You know, some people forget that they are actually going to be managed with other people even in this new role if they get it. So it is a place where you want to talk about your trajectory. Remember, we talked about what are your next 5 years? How do they look like? And you can simply say, I have been in this company for X number of time, and I think I have achieved what I wanted, the things I wanted to do in the company. I have been, you know, summarize again the highlights of your career there, and then say, now I'm open for new opportunities. I want to learn something new if it's a new role that you're getting into.
Okay.
So you can positively put it towards you know, building on your career, not just that you want to swap roles because you feel like.
Okay.
You know,
So
something.
assume I take some time off my job, maybe 3 years to raise my children, and then during the interview panel, they notice that gap and they ask me, what were you doing during this period? What do I say?
You just say it was family time. Remember, I think the mistake that people do is they don't talk about what they were doing during that period. So there is a gap in my CV. Even when you're doing the intro, like tell us a bit about yourself, you did not highlight the gap. So it's highlighting the gap and saying, yes, I stepped away from work for 3 years because I was raising my family. But during these 3 years, this is what I was doing. Remember, some of the skills and attributes of even being a mother, raising a family, also ties in back. For example, preparing your kids for school, organizing house, timekeeping, all that is still attributes that you have that are required in a work environment. So it's bringing out those positives and talking. If you are doing business, which people don't usually want to say, if you're doing, you went to try business, it didn't work out, it's good to say. And you say you learned out of it. So what did you learn out of that period when you were away from work?
Okay, Grace, because we need to wrap this up, I need you to respond to this very briefly. I mean, sometimes I actually feel like I'm not the best here. Maybe there's someone who has a master's and I don't have a master's, and I'm being asked, why are you the best in this? Why should we hire you instead of, you know, the other person?
Again, you're just highlighting your characteristics, attributes, competencies. Some roles, it's not even about having a master's or a degree. It's just your personality. If you have a strong personality and you're able to communicate and tell the panel what you can bring on board and why you're best suited for the role in terms of even your previous achievements, you'll be able to get it. So it's not about education so much anymore. It's about you convincing with the key competencies, your key attributes, your characteristics, and how you portray yourself when you're in that panel.
Okay. Last question from myself, Grace. It's been, you know, 2 days after the interview. The third day passes, the fourth one, I'm still looking at my phone. Every time it buzzes, I'm like, maybe it's them, you know, and then a week passes, and then a week and a half, and now it's 2 weeks. When should I move on and accept? They say accept and move on.
It's a tricky question because remember, you really want this role. Sometimes some companies even take so long to respond, even more than even 2 months. And then they reach out and say, oh, something happened in the company. That is why we have not reached out. But it's a two-way traffic. You can always reach out and find out. But if you've done the interview, usually within a week or two, they should have an answer. And even if they haven't reached out, you can quickly just write an email and say, thank you. I want to just say thank you again for having me for this interview. I haven't heard from you. What are the results? And to be honest, most organizations today don't respond. They just keep quiet. I think it's because they have thousands and thousands of applicants. And that's why they now need to go into technology and considering that there's someone who has done an interview who really wants some feedback on even areas of improvement. Sometimes you have all the characteristics and skills, but it's just the way you communicated it to the panel that wasn't so convincing. So I would just say averagely 2 weeks. If you haven't heard back from the company, too bad. But sometimes it takes long, so it's neither here nor there.
All right, we have to wrap up this conversation, Grace. Of course, let me just get your parting shot for anyone who has an interview next week, next month, tomorrow, or even today, and they're just, you know, looking for that word of encouragement, or what they don't know what they should do. They are in that bit of being shaky. Give them your parting shot.
I want to encourage them. The environment today is very hard. There are thousands and thousands of people who are looking for work. Remember, even people lost jobs because of the COVID. But be positive, keep applying. There's something called job fatigue. Remember, if you're tired, take a break, start again. Have an A game. Every time you go for an interview, do your research. Know your company, know your role. Look at the job description. What are the key attributes that you have that aligns with that job description? And then put a smile. When you go in there, be positive, have a positive vibe, smile, and say thank you after the interview. It's usually a learning curve. So even if you do the job, you have learned something.
All right, do your research, know your job, and put on a smile. That's the parting shot, of course, from Grace Odongo. She's a career coach, and she's been joining us this morning for this conversation to help you, of course, to tell you what you need to know or what you need to do to be able to hack and emerge top of that next job interview. Many thanks, of course, to Grace for helping us with this discussion. We have to go for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have yet another exciting conversation about the impact of COVID-19 on women-led businesses. Don't go too far.
Shopping season is here thanks to Notify Mall. Shop from hundreds of online shops at our mega malls along Moi Avenue in Nairobi and Moi Avenue in Mombasa. Notify Mall, all your favorite online brands under one roof.
Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory you can open an account and lipa pole pole at your convenience? Did you know at Ruiru Mabati Factory you can get customized sizes according to your roof plan to avoid wastage? Did you know Ruiru Mabati Factory offers free delivery countrywide within 72 hours? Call us now on 0111 050 700. Ruiru Mabati Factory, mali safi kwa bei poa.
It's super cool to be a mass superhero, to get the spread of the virus to 0.
Here's how to wear a mask. Clean your hands before putting on your mask. Make sure your mask is clean. Cover your mouth, nose, and chin with a clean mask. Then adjust the mask on your face, leaving no gaps on the sides. That's it. Now you're good to go. Yay! Wearing a mask helps protect you and others from spreading viruses.
To get the spread of the virus to 0.
On the trend at 10 p.m.
If I wanted to be an animal, I would rather be a dove because of the freedom and the pureness of it.
A cheetah, so because I'll be the fastest animal.
Some mixed berry. You can't lie, it is good.
It's
soda mixed with mixed berry.
Cooks cook cupcake quickly. Cooks cupcake quickly.
Cooks cook cupcake quickly. Cooks cook cupcake. Cooks cook cupcake.
So boys and girls, this is what you've made using origami.
Tom and Jerry are about to start over.
'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do. Oh yeah.